On the flight deck of USS Kitty Hawk somewhere in the North Arabian Sea, a sailor is repainting a hull number, CVB 63. The number has been on this ship since 1955, 71 years. Kitty Hawk was commissioned when Dwight Eisenhower was president, when jet aircraft were still a military novelty, when the Soviet Navy was the only adversary American carrier doctrine was built to defeat. The ship is 1,163 feet long. It displaces 101 tons at full load. Its 4 steam turbines, each producing 35,000 shaft horsepower, were designed to sustain 33 knots for fleet engagements that were supposed to happen in the North Atlantic. They are currently pointed at the Strait of Hormuz. Kitty Hawk is not the most capable carrier in the United States Navy. It is not the most modern. Its radar systems are older than most of its crew's parents. Its catapult mechanisms require steam pressure systems that every new carrier in the fleet has already replaced with electromagnetic launch technology. Its defensive suite against the specific threats it will face at Hormuz, anti-ship ballistic missiles, supersonic cruise missiles, swarming drone attacks, was not designed for any of them. Iran knows all of this. Iran has known for weeks that Kitty Hawk is coming. Iran is not alarmed. Iran is pleased. And that is exactly the problem Iran has walked into. On April 14, 1988, USS Samuel B. Roberts struck an Iranian M08 contact mine in the Persian Gulf. The mine cost $1,500. The hull breach measured 15 feet wide. The keel was broken in 2 places. 10 sailors were wounded. Repairs cost $89. $5 million. It took 13 months. Iran looked at that equation and concluded something. The United States Navy can be bled. They were right. A $1,500 weapon against a $400 million frigate is a cost exchange ratio of 1 to $267,000. No Air Force, no missile battery, no submarine fleet achieves that asymmetry. The mine was a revelation, and Iran spent the next 36 years building a doctrine around it. Fast attack boats costing $50,000 to $500,000 each, designed to force $5. 3 million SM-6 interceptors from Aegis VLS cells in exchange for $50,000 of fiberglass. Noor anti-ship missiles at $200,000 per round, targeting hulls worth $2 billion each. A 1,500-vessel IRGC Navy built around the principle that America's strength is also America's vulnerability. Every asset it deploys to Hormuz is more expensive than anything Iran can lose. The carrier is the ultimate expression of that vulnerability. A Nimitz-class carrier costs $4 billion to build. A Gerald R. Ford class costs $13, $3 billion. The air wing aboard, 70 to 80 aircraft, represents another $5 to $8 billion of hardware. The 5-ship strike group screening the carrier adds another $8 to $10 billion of Aegis destroyers, attack submarines, and supply vessels. Send a carrier to Hormuz, and you have concentrated $25 billion of irreplaceable American military hardware into a 21 nautical mile strait with no room to maneuver. Iran's entire naval doctrine was built to threaten that equation. So the United States Navy sent Iran exactly what it wanted, an 81,000-ton carrier, the oldest in the fleet, right into the strait. And Iran celebrated. Subscribe to channel. We do not count ships. We calculate what they are actually for. Here is what the Iranian intelligence assessment almost certainly looked like when Kitty Hawk's deployment orders became known. An aging conventional carrier. Steam catapults, not electromagnetic. Older defensive radar. No integrated CWIP Block 3 electronic warfare suite. No ship self-defense system upgrade package. A crew trained to operate 1970s systems on a 1950s hull. If any carrier in the U.S. fleet is vulnerable to the specific threat package Iran has deployed at Hormuz, layered anti-ship missiles, swarm boat saturation, minefields in the transit corridor, it is this one. Iran's assessment is not wrong. Kitty Hawk is genuinely more vulnerable at Hormuz than a Gerald R. Ford would be. Iran's assessment is also completely irrelevant, because the question is not whether Kitty Hawk can survive everything Iran can throw at it. The question is what Iran has to do to try. And what Iran has to do to try is exactly what the U.S. Navy needs Iran to do. Kitty Hawk is not a carrier sent to fight. Kitty Hawk is a carrier sent to be targeted. And the targeting of Kitty Hawk is the mechanism by which the U.S. Navy wins the engagement it actually wants to fight. This is not a concept invented for Hormuz. It has a name. It has a history. And understanding it changes everything about how you read every ship movement report coming out of the Fifth Fleet. In naval warfare, a vessel deployed not to project power but to absorb attention is called a decoy asset. The doctrine is old. The Romans used it in the Punic Wars. The British used it in both world wars. The United States used it in the Pacific, the Atlantic, and the Korean Peninsula. But modern decoy doctrine is not about a ship that looks like the real thing. It is about a ship whose vulnerability forces the adversary to commit resources, intelligence assets, weapons inventory, command attention, launch authorization, against a target that is either defended by systems the adversary cannot see, or deliberately positioned to reveal the adversary's capabilities in the act of attacking it. Kitty Hawk at Hormuz is the second type. To understand why, we need to understand the threat Iran has staged against the strait and what revealing that threat requires. Iran's primary anti-ship capability at Hormuz consists of three layered systems. The first layer is the Noor anti-ship cruise missile, Iran's domestically produced derivative of the Chinese C-82. Range 170 kilometers. Sea-skimming flight profile. Terminal speed approximately Mach 0.9. Radar guided with infrared backup. Iran has deployed mobile launchers along the mountainous coastline of the strait's northern shore, positioned in hardened revetments and tunnel complexes inside the Hajar mountain range. The launchers are mobile. They move. Satellite imagery cannot track them reliably between overpasses. The second layer is the Khalij Fars anti-ship ballistic missile, a ballistic missile designed to strike moving surface targets. Range 300 kilometers. Terminal phase maneuverability to track a maneuvering ship. Speed at terminal phase exceeds Mach 3. This weapon does not follow a predictable cruise trajectory that Aegis standard missiles are optimized to intercept. It comes down steeply, fast, and late course correcting against a maneuvering target. The third layer is the swarming surface threat. 500 plus IRGC fast attack craft carrying Naser, short-range anti-ship missiles, RPGs, heavy machine guns, and suicide boat payloads. Their doctrine is saturation. Force every Aegis ship in the strike group to make engagement decisions simultaneously against more targets than the fire control system was designed to handle at one time. 3 layers, 3 different flight profiles, 3 different intercept requirements. And all 3 have something in common. To engage, they must reveal themselves. The Noor launcher must raise its targeting radar. The Khalij Fars battery must receive targeting data from an offboard sensor and complete its launch sequence. The fast attack swarm must leave its coastal hiding positions and enter the open water of the transit corridor. Every one of those actions is detectable by signals, intelligence aircraft orbiting at 40,000 feet, by the E-2D Advanced Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft flying from the carrier's deck, by the RC-135 rivet joint electronic intelligence platforms that have been operating over the Gulf continuously since the crisis began, by undersea sensors, by the satellite constellation. Iran cannot reveal its targeting capability without revealing its targeting capability. That is the equation Kitty Hawk is designed to force. But Kitty Hawk is not sent to Hormuz alone. And this is where the picture most coverage misses entirely comes into view. The carrier strike group arrayed around Kitty Hawk at Hormuz right now represents arguably the densest concentration of anti-air, anti-missile, and electronic warfare capability ever assembled in a single transit corridor. USS Lake Erie, CG-70, is the Ticonderoga-class Aegis cruiser, assigned as the strike group's air warfare commander. Lake Erie carries the AN Spy-1B radar, a 4-faced phased array system that simultaneously tracks more than 100 airborne contacts within a 200 nautical mile radius. Its vertical launch system holds 122 cells loaded with a combination of SM-2 Block 3B standard missiles for cruise missile defense, SM-3 Block 2IA interceptors capable of engaging ballistic missile threats in the terminal phase, and SM-6 dual-purpose interceptors that can engage both air-breathing threats and surface targets. Lake Erie does not need to see the Khalij Fars missile coming from a radar mount on its deck. It receives targeting data from space-based infrared sensors and the E-2D Hawkeye simultaneously and fires before the missile's seeker radar is activated. 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, USS Chung-Hoon DDG-A-93 and USS Stockdale DDG-106, form the close-in screen. Each carries the AN Spy-1DV radar, 96-cell VLS, and the AN SLQ-32V6 CWEP Block 3 electronic warfare suite, a system that can locate, classify, and jam the targeting radar of a Noor missile before the missile's seeker locks onto the carrier's hull. The CWEP Block 3 is not widely covered. It should be. The system does not shoot down missiles. It makes missiles miss. By generating false target returns at a distance from the actual hull, it deceives the missile's terminal seeker into steering for a ghost. The missile impacts water 300 meters from its intended target. The carrier is undamaged. The launch position of the missile is precisely located by the electronic warfare system's direction-finding capability and passed to the strike package overhead before the debris settles. 1 Noor missile fired. 1 Noor launcher found. 1 FA-18 on station with 2 AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missiles addressed to the precise GPS coordinate of the launcher's radar emission. The launcher fires 1 missile. The launcher ceases to exist. This is what Kitty Hawk's vulnerability forces Iran to attempt. And every attempt reveals a capability the U.S. Navy needs to locate and destroy before the strait clears. There's a second reason Kitty Hawk is the right ship for this mission, and it has nothing to do with its combat capability. An aging ship reveals Iranian capabilities at a cost the U.S. Navy can actually afford to risk. This is the logic that most analysts state backwards. They say, Kitty Hawk is sent because the Navy doesn't want to risk its most capable carrier. True, as far as it goes, but the more important statement is the inverse. The United States Navy actually needs to see what Iran does when it believes it has a realistic shot at a carrier kill. If the forward strike group enters Hormuz, Iran knows its capabilities are insufficient for a carrier kill. Iran's doctrine calls for restraint against a target its weapons cannot reach. Iran conserves its inventory, conceals its launchers, holds its swarm boats in port, and waits for a more favorable engagement. The Navy learns nothing. The launcher positions remain unknown. The Khalij Fars battery locations remain unconfirmed. The swarm staging areas remain unmapped. Kitty Hawk changes the calculus. An older carrier with a visibly degraded defensive suite and a known vulnerability to the exact weapons Iran has prepositioned. That is a target Iran's doctrine says to engage. That is a target the IRGC commander looks at and sees a career-defining kill. The engagement is ordered. The launchers go active. The swarm boats leave the coves. And the entire intelligence architecture the United States has positioned over the Gulf. The RC-135s, the EP-3 Ares, the signals intelligence satellites, the undersea acoustic sensors, the E-2D Hawkeyes, records every emission, every hull movement, every radar activation, every communication from every IRGC command node that participates in the engagement sequence. The Navy does not just learn where the launchers are. The Navy learns the command chain, the timing sequences, the authentication codes, the decision latency between IRGC command and launcher activation, the frequency agility patterns of the targeting radars, intelligence that is worth more than any single carrier. Kitty Hawk is bait, and the most valuable fish in an intelligence operation is not the one you catch. It is the one that reveals where all the others are hiding. At this point, every other channel covering this deployment focuses on one of two stories. Story 1, the U.S. Navy is reckless. Sending an aging carrier into a contested strait is a strategic blunder. Iran will target it. The ship is vulnerable. American sailors are at risk. Story 2, the U.S. Navy is projecting strength. A carrier in the strait demonstrates commitment. It signals resolve. It shows Iran that America will not back down. Both stories are wrong. Or rather, both stories are looking at the instrument and missing the music entirely. This is war vision. And the real question is not whether Kitty Hawk is strong enough to survive or whether its presence sends a message. The real question is what specific outcome the U.S. Navy needs from this deployment that no other asset in the fleet can produce. The answer requires understanding three things that most coverage never mentions. The concept of an engagement forcing function, the mathematics of Iranian missile inventory against American intercept capacity, and the one variable that changes the entire equation before a single missile leaves a launcher. Variable 1, the forcing function. Iran's missile batteries and fast attack swarms are most dangerous when their positions are unknown. A launcher you cannot locate cannot be preempted. A swarm staging area you have not mapped cannot be struck before the boats deploy. A command and control node whose communications you have not intercepted cannot be jammed at the moment of launch authorization. The most dangerous moment in the Iran-US naval confrontation is not the moment of engagement. It is the period before engagement, when Iranian capabilities are hidden and intact, and American targeting packages are incomplete. Kitty Hawk's deployment shortens that period to near zero. By presenting a target, Iran's doctrine compels it to engage, or at least to prepare to engage. The carrier forces the activation of every sensor, radar, and communication system in Iran's maritime strike architecture. The forcing function is not the carrier's weapons. It is the carrier's vulnerability. The older the ship, the more credible the target, the more completely Iran's hidden architecture reveals itself in the act of preparing to strike. Kitty Hawk at Hormuz does more intelligence collection by being old than a Ford class could do by being modern. Its weakness is the operational instrument. Variable 2, the inventory math. Iran's Khalij Fars anti-ship ballistic missile inventory is estimated at between 50 and 100 operational rounds. Its Noor cruise missile inventory across all mobile and fixed launchers in the Strait region is estimated at between 200 and 400 rounds. Its fast attack swarm consists of approximately 1,500 craft, of which perhaps 400 to 600 are equipped with anti-ship missiles or configured for suicide attack. These are large numbers. Against a single carrier and its 5-ship screen, they represent a genuine saturation threat. But consider the consumption rate. Every Noor missile fired is one Noor missile no longer in inventory. Every Khalij Fars round expended is one ballistic missile Iran cannot replace. Domestic production is estimated at 12 to 20 rounds per year, and the production facility at Parchin was struck in the opening days of Operation Epic Fury. Every fast attack craft that leaves its cove and enters the open water of the transit corridor is a craft that enters the engagement envelope of the A-10s, Apaches, and Aegis systems we covered in our previous breakdowns. Iran knows this arithmetic. Iran is reluctant to expend irreplaceable inventory on a carrier whose strike group will kill launchers and boats faster than they can be replaced. The only scenario in which Iran commits to a full engagement is the scenario in which the target appears worth the cost. A Ford-class carrier does not appear worth the cost. It appears impenetrable, which makes the cost infinite and the probability of a kill near zero. Kitty Hawk appears to be worth the cost. Its visible vulnerabilities suggest an achievable kill. Iran's doctrine says, engage. And the moment Iran engages, the inventory begins depleting against a target whose defenders are specifically optimized to kill Iranian anti-ship platforms cheaply and quickly. Every SM-6 that intercepts a Noor costs $5. $3 million every HARM missile that kills a Noor launcher costs $284,000. Every A-10 gun run that destroys a fast attack boat costs under $10,000. Iran's inventory depletes. America's depletes slower. The strait becomes progressively safer for every ship that comes after Kitty Hawk, because the weapons that threaten those ships are burning against a carrier that was sent precisely to absorb the first volley. Variable 3, the permission structure. In the current rules of engagement, the United States cannot preemptively strike Iranian mobile missile launchers that have not yet fired. The legal and political framework of the operation requires an act of initiation by Iran before certain strike authorities are unlocked. Kitty Hawk solves the permission problem. When an IRGC launcher activates its targeting radar and acquires the carrier as a target, that activation constitutes a hostile act under the standing rules of engagement. The fire control solution on Kitty Hawk, the completed targeting sequence, radar lock, and pre-launch confirmation, is legally and under military doctrine an attack in progress. It does not require the missile to leave the rail. It requires the targeting solution to be completed. The moment that happens, the strike package overhead has permission to engage the launcher. Every launcher that goes active against Kitty Hawk is legally targetable before it fires its first missile. Kitty Hawk does not need to be struck to grant permission. It needs to be targeted, and Iran's doctrine will target it. The carrier is the permission slip. The oldest ship in the fleet is the most valuable instrument for unlocking the engagement authorities the Navy needs to systematically dismantle Iran's missile architecture before the strait reopens. The Strait of Hormuz will reopen. The equation that governs when and how it reopens has 3 inputs. The mine countermeasure vessels, which we covered in our Avenger-class breakdown, are clearing the transit corridor of the 5,000 to 6,000 mines Iran laid. Every mine cleared is one Iran cannot replace. The production facilities are gone. The mine layer vessels are gone. The mines on the seafloor are the last ones Iran will ever have. The missile launcher and fast attack inventory is depleting against the engagement forcing function Kitty Hawk was sent to provide. Every launcher that goes active is a launcher that gets struck. Every swarm boat that enters open water enters the kill zone of the combined arms package the A-10 breakdown detailed. And Iran's oil revenue, 4 million barrels per day, nearly all of it through the strait, its own mines closed, has fallen to near zero. The economic pressure compounds daily. The regime that launched a mine campaign to bankrupt American naval operations is instead bankrupting itself. When those 3 variables reach their optimum, corridor cleared, Iranian missile architecture degraded to below saturation threshold, economic leverage at maximum, the strait reopens. Commercial traffic resumes. The 150 tankers anchored outside the corridor move. Kitty Hawk does not need to survive an Iranian carrier-killing strike for this outcome to occur. It needs to exist as a credible target long enough for the intelligence harvest, the permission structure, and the inventory depletion to reach their operational thresholds. It has been doing exactly that. An 81,000-ton ship, 71 years old. Steam catapults in 1970s radar, parked exactly where Iran wanted it, accomplishing precisely what the Navy sent it to accomplish. On the flight deck of USS Kitty Hawk, the hull number has been repainted, CVB 63, the same number it has carried since 1955, through Yankee Station in the Gulf of Tonkin, through Operation Desert Storm, through operations in the Western Pacific for 6 decades of American forward presence. The ship is old, its systems are dated, its vulnerability to the specific threat package Iran has staged at Hormuz is real, documented, and known to every naval analyst on Earth, including the ones inside Iranian intelligence. Iran looked at this ship and saw a target. The United States Navy looked at this ship and saw a tool. Not a tool for fighting, a tool for revealing, for forcing, for depleting, for granting permission. The oldest ship in the fleet is not at Hormuz despite its age. It is at Hormuz because of it. Every year of obsolescence is an instrument of deception. Every visible vulnerability is a mechanism of compulsion. Every system that Iran's analysts can point to as degraded or outdated is another reason for Iran's doctrine to say, this is the moment, this is the target, this is the engagement worth committing inventory to. And every commitment of that inventory is one step closer to an empty launcher. An empty launcher in a minefield already being cleared, in a strait already being harvested of intelligence, by a permission structure already being triggered. 36 years ago, a $1,500 mine nearly sank a $400 million frigate. Iran learned from that equation that America's most expensive assets were its most exploitable vulnerabilities. The U.S. Navy spent 36 years learning the same lesson. The most valuable ship in the fleet right now is not the most expensive one. It is the one Iran cannot stop looking at